Okay, so I'm here to introduce Michael Dickter, the painter, my husband, co-owner of the gallery. I'm already getting all teary-eyed. Okay. I can't do this. All right, this is why I have to read this. Okay.
Do it by interpretive dance.
Okay, but I thought I would just do a little introduction about the show and, and introducing Michael. So, living alongside an artist and observing their creative process. Jesus.
You want me to read it for you?
It's so bad.
No,
Okay.
but you could read this for me.
Living alongside an artist and observing their creative process is a fascinating experience. This may not be an entirely accurate story, but it felt as though Michael was in sort of a creative hibernation after his heart surgery this spring. Then all of a sudden, he just kind of like strolled into his studio and painted, I forgot to give props, and painted this remarkable painting. So I'm just gonna start passing. There's not enough for everybody, so.
Keep one so you could show everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, dude. So he walked into the studio and just painted this remarkable painting of a horse with a flower. It felt like it just like came out of nowhere, but it also felt sort of inevitable, like it was meant to be.
I'm sorry.
So when I look at this painting, I see this horse that's really gentle and contemplative. And I can't tell if it's coming to the foreground or fading into the distance. I'm going to be able to do this. Okay. The horse is bathed in a serene shade of blue, reminding me of an endless expanse of sky or of the sea. And then there's that fucking flower in the middle of the painting. It's situated in the heart of the piece. The painting is about the flower. And despite the grandeur of the horse, it's that flower that's drawing our attention. It's vibrant, it's red, it's pulsating with life, and it feels like it's drawing the horse into the foreground, which after Michael's heart surgery is like super profound for me. Michael often speaks about how a painting is a series of small decisions. It's a fascinating insight, like whatever. But isn't it equally captivating to consider what each of us as viewers and listeners bring to a work of art? I have to blow my nose. We hung this piece at art fair, and a visitor was profoundly moved and crafted their own narrative around the piece, connecting it to their personal journey. Then another visitor entered the gallery. Hi, Claudia.
Hi.
Then another visitor entered the gallery and was deeply affected by the bunny piece on the other side of the wall here, weaving their own unique story to the piece. And as I look around this gallery, I'm struck by how Michael's creations narrate their own stories. These narratives intermingle with Robert's breathtaking work, which envelops us and transports us to somewhere beautiful and dreamy, especially that piece. And so I reflect on how fortunate I am to witness this part of an ongoing artistic journey where each of you, the audience, somehow completes the narrative, turning art into an interactive and really amazing, fulfilling experience. So I have the best job in the world and the best husband.
What she said. Any questions? So I figured I'd talk a little bit about how I got here, and then talk a little bit about the work, and then talk about a little bit about Robert's work, and then you guys can ask me many, many questions, or two. So, when I was thinking about this work, I was thinking where it came from, and it seems that my work tends to be in response to events in my life. So, 2008, I had cancer, and by the end of 2010, I found myself painting birds and flowers, which is work that I did for over a decade. And the obvious connection, birds, flowers, fleeting beauty, kind of things that are fragile but precious. I mean, the analogies to sickness and recovery are many. But what I did with those was I placed them on a white background. I wiped away the background, I wiped away everything. I worked with grids because I was a graphic designer at the time, and I hung those birds on a grid. I just did lines of birds, white on a grid, and I did that for many years. And it wasn't really a conscious thing, it was just kind of a intuitive thing. But then I realized that taking something and put it against the white background removes it. Think Richard Avedon, the photographer, was a fashion photographer and started taking pictures of people against white backdrops. So when you do that, a couple of interesting things happen. You remove the subject from its environment, therefore taking context out of the equation, and that gives you a little bit of a remove because you don't have the usual things around it that you would identify it. But at the same time, by removing that, it focuses it more on the subject. So even though it's removed, it's more intimate because you're confronted with it. So I did that for about 10 years, and then I met Nancy, and the birds started not being so much on a grid, but in these kind of... Oh, you did. So they were in these swoopy shapes, right? I'd make a kind of swoopy shape, and I'd fill that shape in with birds, and that's how my work remained until very recently. So fast forward, the pandemic is here. I find myself engaging in what my friend called age-appropriate activities. So I got a new hip. And then I had a slipped disc and a pinched nerve, and found myself walking with a cane. And then I had this heart surgery this year. And the heart surgery was a thing, and recovery was long and took way longer than I wanted it to. And when I finally got back into the studio after not painting for, 3 or 4 months, a long, long time, I found I didn't know what to do. I know that this was an event that needed a response in some way, but I didn't want to illustrate what I've been going through, and I had no clear idea of how to respond to it. So I did what I usually do, is I picked something that I knew and painted it. Something safe, quick, easy, and it was that deer. I had painted that deer, 3 or 4 times. I knew it. So I did a painting of it, and I liked the painting, and then I decided to put a flower in front of it because I've been sticking flowers on everything for 10 years, and I knew how to do that. So I stuck a flower on it, and that didn't work, and then I stuck another flower on it, and that didn't work, and then I stuck another flower on it, that didn't work. In fact, if you can see in the middle of that painting the vestiges of 2 or 3 flowers that I took out. And I wasn't happy with the vertical flower and the verticality of the deer's leg. That wasn't working for me, so I decided let's put a whole bunch of flowers in that. And that way I can obscure the legs that were bothering me, and we'll see how it happens. And that worked. And then I decided to paint the face green, which is no big deal. I mean, people paint animals different colors every day of the week. It's Laura Hudson who paints beautiful rainbow-colored You know, horses, they're fantastic. But for some reason, it was mind-numbingly freeing for me. It was like all the little rules that I had developed over 10 years of painting birds, which was very specific. You know, the birds were very realistic. Even if I dripped them and scratched them, they were very realistic. And by painting that face green, and the green made it even more gentle than it is, it gave me permission to do anything. I don't know why, you know, maybe 2 days later it wouldn't have done that, but it did. So I said, oh, cool. Let's paint animals, and let's paint animals that I've never painted before, because I really don't paint mammals, and put flowers in front of it. So I did that painting over there of the coyote. And, you know, it's with the coyotes, right? They're everywhere. And I painted the coyote gray, and on top of that, I wanted, already I'm setting up new rules for what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, literally, and I'm setting up new rules. Okay, I want to paint fast. That seems really important to me, you know. If I can do a painting in 2 weeks instead of a month, I'll do it. If I can do it in 1 day instead of a week, I'll do it. If I can do it in 3 hours instead of a day, I'll do that. So I painted that really fast. And I decided I wanted to try to be reductive as opposed to additive, by which means I don't want to paint the things, I want to wipe it away. So in that gray piece over there, I painted the whole shape of the animal in gray, and then I took a wet rag and I wiped away the defining pieces, the highlights I wiped away, the midtones I wiped away. Everything was wiping away and taking away. And that seemed to work really, really well. And it's at that point, actually, that I did the blue horse. And the blue horse, that blue horse on the card. And I did that with the big ass red flower right in the middle of the painting. And it was like, oh, that clicked. That was a beautiful thing. And all of a sudden, things kind of made sense. Oh yeah, I'm painting my recovery. Oh yeah, I'm painting this fragile flower, and then I've got these big, strong, robust animals that I'm painting. You know, and I hadn't really planned it out. I hadn't said, oh yeah, I'll do this and this. It was kind of like a lot of little steps leading to me this. And after I did the horse painting, it was, excuse the analogy, off to the races. You know, now I had a thing. I had an idea, I had a concept that aligned with what I was feeling. You know, and the more I was painting, the better I was feeling, and the better I was feeling, the more I was painting. You know, it was one of those two things. So I said, oh, let me paint another horse. And then I did this painting of a horse. And this was a great thing to paint. So I decided I was going to paint the horse. I was going to paint one horse, and then I was going to put a flower in it. So I painted the horse, I put a flower in it, with the wrong flower, I took it out, I painted another flower, put that in. And then I was saying to myself, yeah, something's not right. I had, you see this little shape here? It's kind of the shape of a horse's nose, whatever. I had drawn the horse originally in one position, didn't like it, took it out, did it in another position. Then I had the horse in the flower, and I thought I was done, but then it wasn't done. I didn't like it, it needed something else. So I put in the orange horse. I'm going to stop this beautiful, fluid narrative for a second and tell you a story about a teaching moment from when I was in school. And it's the early 70s. I'm in Fred Zimmerman's survey class of European painting. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, slides, big lecture hall, it's dark, Fred's sitting up there, he has sunglasses on because he's either falling asleep like everybody else or he's hungover. You decide which. So there he is, and he is talking about, and I'm going to show you this because I thought about this painting when I was painting this. This painting called the Arnolfini portrait, right? Very, very, very famous painting. This painting is full of symbolism. It's got more symbolism per square inch than any other painting ever made. And he's talking about it, and he's saying, well, you know, the mirror means something, and the chandelier means something, and the dog means something, and the shoes mean something, the oranges mean something, the red fabric means something, the green fabric means something, the window means something. I mean, it's like on and on and on about all the symbolism of, you know, 1492 paintings going on. And then he stops, and he turns to us, and he takes off his glasses, and he goes, but, I put the painting away, but if the painting did not need a round circle there, that mirror wouldn't be there. If the painting, the demands of the painting did not need this chandelier, that chandelier wouldn't be there. Wouldn't be a dog, wouldn't be shoes. If the painting did not need a bit of orange right over here, there wouldn't be oranges there. And the hierarchy of the needs of the painting always, always, always comes first, right? So, I tell you this to tell you that. When you're painting a painting like this, and I've got the idea, I'm doing big, large, robust animals in front of fragile flowers, right? You know, okay, I had heart surgery, there's this, there's that. But my job as an artist is to be able to let this painting teach me what it needs. Because clearly I don't know what it needs, otherwise I wouldn't keep putting flowers in and taking them out, right? It needs to teach me what it needs. And every painting will teach you what it needs. You just have to figure out how to listen to it. So all of a sudden, it taught me it needed this. It taught me it needed this little shadow. It taught me that I want to convey power and movement into a horse that has a static stance. They're standing still, basically. This one has a foot lifted up, but its back feet are standing still. And how do I do that? So maybe I do that by color, maybe I do that by brushstroke, maybe I take a squeegee and start going like this and hitting it like that. Maybe I take some of the orange and just go like that. And through all of these things, and through the background, and through these marks, I can convey some kinetic energy that I want to convey, and the power. It's the same thing when you guys look at a painting. And I've got this crazy thing. There's a spirit of every painting. And that painting's spiritual journey is never complete unless somebody besides me looks at it. It's kind of like, I have a relationship to this, I know what it means, you know, I've done it. And then I stick it on the wall and it's not mine anymore. And then Dewey comes over and he looks at it and he has a narrative, and his narrative has nothing to do with what I was thinking about it. Now it's his and his relationship to it. And he has to learn how to look at the painting so the things that I've done will come up and visit him. And that usually takes time, you know. I've had this painting of a horse over there that I painted over a painting of hummingbirds. And I've seen many people look at that painting, and only one or two say, oh, I love the hummingbirds in that painting, you know? And it takes a while to see the hummingbirds. They're white on white. But if you take the time, all of a sudden, those things come to the surface, and that's your guys' job. So I always feel that there's needs to be this kind of duality, my job, your job, then that journey is complete. So, thanks for the digression. Getting back to this, I put another horse in, and all of a sudden I'm not dealing with a horse and a flower. I'm dealing with two horses. Now I'm dealing with duality. And what the hell does that mean? I have no idea. I have to look it up. Duality, And now I'm doing, paintings about duality. The paintings over there in the middle. Two deer, two rabbits. Over here, last year I even did this painting, duality. I was thinking of Narcissus when I painted this one. Narcissus, the Greek myth, the beautiful boy who looks in the mirror and looks in the lake and sees his reflection, doesn't know it's him, and falls in love with himself. So a lot of different things. So after that, it was just a beautiful flow. I painted a yellow bear that's on the outside in the window, which I always thought of as a portrait of my father, because he was a big, guy my size, a little bigger, and he was very hairy and he was very gentle, and I painted these hairs because it's Whitby, rabbits, hairs, how could you not? And I like the idea of hairs. I like there's something about a hair that's different than just a rabbit. I like the speed of them. Things that move fast, things that live fast, flowers, birds, always fascinated me. So I did the hares and I did the stags, and all of a sudden I had a show. The other thing that surprised me about this body of work is when I hung the show. I did a little graphic for the show with my work and Robert's work, and I chose these two images, and I looked at that and I go, wow, they talk to each other. And then when we brought the work down here, and I put these two together, I was stunned, I was amazed. I mean, Robert's work is just so beautiful. And the way these two paintings talk to each other, it just blew my mind. So usually when we hang a show, my work's here, your work's on that wall, and it's kind of very separate. And all of a sudden I said, oh, let's see if we can hang them by color, and let's see what we can get, how we can get them to talk to each other in color. And it worked out great. And they still have enough individually so you could really feel what Robert's doing. A word about Robert Jessup, who unfortunately isn't here because he's moved back to Texas, where he taught for 30 years and raised his family. Robert Jessup is a hell of a painter. He's a student of painting. He has this Zen-like way, and his wife, Faith, who also paints and shows in the museum, spend every day painting. I mean, they get up, they paint for 6-7 hours, they go for a walk, they eat dinner, rinse and repeat. That's their life, and they're happy. And I look at Robert's painting, I look at this painting, and I look at the parallels to what I'm doing. And it's just a glorious examination of joy, of color, of mark, And by talking to him, I know that he approaches every canvas as a teaching moment. So I'm looking around at just the work here, and I'm thinking, which came first? How did he do it? And I really didn't have a chance to talk to him about this because he's in Texas. But I look at that and I say, oh, Well, he's learning how to make these marks, you know, and then he's learning how to make these soft marks. And he goes, oh, the soft marks are really cool. Let me do a whole painting of soft marks so I can learn what those do. And it's like the shimmering thing of light. And then he's got this beautiful triptych over there, and he says, let me see what happens when I put the soft mark in the middle, and it creates a different space, and then the more active marks on the side. And I go from painting to painting, learning from what he is doing, and wondering what he learned. Which order did he learn it in? How did he do it? I mean, he moved to Whitby and he started this series called Whitby. And he's up to Whitby 190. Wow. And he started them in 2019. So, and these are small paintings for him. The paintings he shows in Dallas are 90 by 130, you know. And then he'll make it a diptych, so it's 90 by 260. They're huge paintings, you know. It's not something you can do in 3 hours like mine. So he started doing, he was doing these kind of line paintings. They looked like ribbons, colorful ribbons, and he did that a few years, and then he investigated a different kind of line, more linear. And you can see in this painting over here, there's still a lot of linear elements that come in and come out, you know, through that curtain of light. So he learns something and he changes, and he learns something and he changes, and he does these just beautiful light-filled canvas. This body of work really I find joyous. So take a couple of moments after the talk and sit in front of a couple of Robert Jessups and just let it come to you. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. So, and there you have it.
Lovely.
So, that's how I got to this place. I hope you like the paintings.
Yes, awesome.
So, and I thank you. Questions? Okay.
So what's your personal relationship with horses?
I have none.
Okay.
When I was 5 in Coney Island, I rode a pony.
Okay.
And when I was 35, I rode a horse for half an hour.
How old were
That's
you
it.
when you started drawing? How old were you when you began to draw?
Well, when I was in junior high school, I was really engaged in drawing Superman. And then Superman turned into Batman. Batman turned into Green Lantern. And
Then you had color?
no,
They were line drawings?
yeah, mostly pen, because that's what I had. And I didn't take any art classes when I was in high school. And then I got to college and I was a history major because my most influential teacher in high school was a history teacher, and then someplace in the middle of the history of Roman Empire, I realized I really don't give a shit about the Roman Empire. Plus, I really don't like writing term papers. My good friend Gary Seeler came up to me and goes, you know, Dickter, we art majors don't do term papers.
I went to Scripps thinking I might be an artist, but I didn't. But I enjoyed their humanities curriculum, which is required for 3 years, which gave me the foundation for appreciating art later.
Well, that's good. Good. Any other?
Do you find that artwork for you has been therapeutic throughout your life, or you're just moving into this with a series of sort of recoveries, or do you feel like it's been there throughout?
Well, we'll have to unpack the word therapeutic. Once during therapy, I tried to do artwork around my myriad of issues, and it was a horrible experience of me trying to illustrate whatever I was going through. So I find that making a painting is a glorious thing, and I feel better than anything when it goes well. And then there are the times when it doesn't go well, and it's maddening, and I don't feel good. You know, sometimes I feel like, you know, I'm in a tug of war with it. So it's not therapeutic in the sense, you know, art therapy is therapeutic, or, you know, it's therapeutic in the sense that it's an activity that totally engages me. I'm totally present in the moment. It's like, and I've never played golf, it's like golf, which has been described as moments of ecstasy punctuated by hours of frustration. So that's kind of how it is. And even when I'm doing these things, right? So I've got an idea. Oh, I like big, powerful mammals, fragile flowers, post-op, makes sense. Once I got that concept, I don't think about it again, right? When I'm doing this painting, I am 100% trying to figure out how to paint that flower, trying to figure out what do the eyes and nose of horses do? I don't know. I've never painted a horse, so I've got to learn that. What do the ankles of a horse do? I don't know. I've got to learn that. So I am dealing with very immediate, very specific concerns. And the grander meaning of what I'm doing only happens when I put 6 of them or 8 of them together and I look at it and I say, oh yeah, that kind of speaks to that. Or, oh yeah, look, I don't have to worry about the legs, and those flowers mean a nice thing. So, and that's how it goes, you know. Does that answer your question?
It does, because you know, I had you a commissioned a painting from you, and I was really enthralled with your birds, and I asked you what your connection with birds were, and there really wasn't much, you know, like, you know, and so, and you're saying the same thing about the horses. So,
Well,
so I'm like, it's interesting because you don't seem to be personally touched by some of the subject matter that you're known for in the way of the subject matter itself.
No, I am personally touched. I'm totally engaged with the idea of birds, but I'm not a birder. So, you know, when I was doing birds, and I'd be doing a painting, and then I realized I need an orange bird, right? So I Googled orange birds, and then a whole bunch of orange birds came out, and I go, oh, I like that one, I'll stick it in. And then somebody who's a birder would come in and say, oh, it's so odd that you would choose blah, 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 right? And I go, why is it odd? Because, oh, you know, they're only found in this little area in the Amazon. I mean, I said, it's orange. So my engagement is with the idea of the birds and the movement of the birds and how birds are perceived by me or in society. And a little bit of, you know, I mean, everything carries symbolic weight. Horses are loaded with symbolism. Loaded with symbolism today. You know, they're powerful, they're graceful, they're freeing. If I had painted horses in 1870, it would be the equivalent of painting, you know, a Ford F-10. You know, it was a beast of burden. We used it, you know, to clear a field, bring stuff to market, you know, to fuel the economy of the westward expansion. I mean, they weren't symbols of freedom and grace and power. They were just, you know, trucks and cars and trains, you know. So things, you know, things mean different things at different times. And for me, you know, it's more like, oh, yeah, I like the idea of large mammals, and I'm engaged with the gracefulness of horses and the power of horses. And, you know, with all the wildlife, the bear, whatever, except my friend the deer, you know, there's a little bit of danger because it's a wild animal, you know. There's violence in the natural world. And there's always a little bit of a hint of that. So
So are whales on your radar?
Terrestrial.
Fish.
Fiction?
Fish.
Oh, not fiction.
So, I have a funny relationship with fish. I want to paint them because they're like birds. They fly through the water. So they has the same thing. And, but I've never gotten around to painting them. I've never sat down and figured out, how am I going to paint that? And I resist painting goldfish because everybody paints goldfish, you know. So, but I love the way goldfish look. So, I haven't figured that out. And whales, yes. Once I do fish, I'll do whales. And then I'll start thinking about Jonah, and you know, it's messy.
Michael, I'm interested in Poppy to take a little deeper cut when we talked about art as therapy of that, and I'm glad you unpacked that. But your own process as far as the unconscious, and you start off with, okay, I had this idea, but I don't know what's going to come out of it, which I think happens with a lot of artists. And then sometimes you might realize it a week later or 10 years later. If you could maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Well, for me, it's, you know, the 10 years later,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
right?
You go, oh, now I know. I didn't know at the time.
So when I started painting things on a white background, it was, you know, I wasn't thinking of the implications of wiping my life clean, a fresh start, or things. I was just thinking, well, you know, I'm a graphic designer. I use grids. What happens if I use grids? And I was thinking, let's make everything simple. Let's take the relationship of color away from the subject of the painting. Let's take composition away from that. I know how to do a composition on a grid. Let's do that. Could be because I'm really lazy. I don't know. So I, you know, but at the time it was more intuitive. The time was like, let's see what happens when I do that. You know, and I didn't start thinking about the implications of doing work in reaction to what I had gone through with cancer for years, literally years, before I started really doing a really deep dive into, you know, I mean, I was looking at 2 years worth of work and saying, oh, I get it, you know. On this body of work, it was more immediate. I knew that it needed a response. I just didn't know what the need was. So it kind of happened in real time. It happened as I was recovering. It happened as everybody was telling me, oh, you've got nice color now.
Do you think that at this age, when you've survived and gone through these traumas, that you're more in touch with sort of the vulnerability and fragility of aging, and also what you have to add to the experience of it through your work?
Well, I live in South Whitby. So, you know, I have a population of everybody who's my age, and everybody who's getting up out of bed and realizing, oh, how stiff I am, and you know, going to the doctors and stuff like that. It's just, yes, I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of that in just how you have to set up your day. You know, oh, I got to go do this and I got to go do that, or you realize, oh yeah, you know, I went for a 15-mile bike ride. You know, I've got to sit still for a day and a half. You know, so yes, I find myself very aware of that, and the whole heart operation kicked that into overdrive.
One more question, then I'll be quiet. So do you think that within the constraints of having gone through that process, that it also gave you more freedom, because there is unlimited time for all of us? More freedom in your painting, or to be
unconsciously probably. It wasn't really, oh, I better start painting loose because I don't got much time. I mean, there's always a little bit of that.
Which always goes back to the unconscious, I think.
Right, you know, I mean, I walked backwards into that.
Oh, he's always really conscious of what's going on with him.
Do you ever read Carlos Castaneda's The Teachings of Don Juan? Everybody, big 70s thing, you know. Anyway, Carlos Castaneda's, he's an anthropology major, and he goes to Mexico and he meets this Yaqui mystic, Don Juan, this man of power. And he becomes his apprentice, even though he's a non-believer. And Don Juan comes to him one night and he says, is in their room in a cabin, he goes, your assignment is to find your spot of power. I'll be back in the morning. And he has no idea what a spot of power is. He has no idea what to do with it. And eventually he's crawling around, he's rolling, he's walking, he's whatever, hours. And then finally he finds that if he goes over there, he starts to feel something, this energy, this anxiousness. But he can't stand there. So he goes back across the room and he starts contemplating this spot. That's my spot of power, you know, but how do I access it? How do I find it? And he keeps approaching it by doing different things, and he keeps getting anxious and keeps retreating across the room to figure out his next assault on his spot of power. And Don Juan comes in the morning and he goes, well, did you find your spot? And Carlos goes, yeah, it's right over there, but I can't stand on it, and I can't sit in it, and I can't do anything. He goes, Don Juan goes, well, what did you do when that happens? He said, well, I came right over here and I started thinking about it. And Don Juan goes, yeah, that's your spot of power. That's how I approach it. I kind of back into it. So, any other questions?
I got one. You know, the difference between these paintings, realistic colors, and that. Are you going to go, where's your world of color going?
These paintings were pre-op. These
Right.
paintings were done at the end of last year. This is where I'm going to run.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are what I'm going to run with.
Whole new world.
Could be.
Yeah.
We'll see.
How often do you paint?
Well, as often as I can. If I'm lucky, I'm painting 5 days a week. If I got a busy week, I'm painting 2 or 3. It depends. You know, just depends on how often I got to go into Seattle, and I work here. You know, so average week, I'll probably say 4 days. According to Robert Jessup, it should be 6.
I love how you weave a lot of the drawing in your work, and I was wondering, when do you start off with a drawing, and then as you go into the painting, are you consciously leaving the drawing marks, or do you bring them back in?
Well, I do bring drawing back in, but I always, if I put something in and I erase it, I always leave it in. I just the way I started painting, and I like leaving the history of that.
I like seeing it, yeah.
Yeah. So when I was painting birds, you know, and I would draw them in, and I'd start painting, and everything shifts a little bit, and all of a sudden, the bird that was over here needs to be over here. I would leave the drawing of the outline drawing of the bird over there, and then I'd paint a new one over here. So I always liked doing that, and I like the implications of it, you know, and I like showing people my thought process.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you. Anything else? I had a guy once who was giving a talk, and he'd go, anybody have questions? And when he did that, he'd be going, anybody have questions? But he didn't know he was doing it. And I remember thinking, nobody's asking me questions.
That's funny.
The answer is, thank you, I'm done.
I have a comment. It's a joy to listen to you.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. I'm glad. In my mind, it wasn't joyful. I loved it, but it
But
was.
it's lovely to know what's around and behind the work and your process and we go through your soul to come up with something. And all the changes that happen in between, you're willing to make them and leave traces of them.
Yeah, I like leaving traces. Thank you. I'm very touched by that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate it. Okay. Have some food. Look at some more.
I want to take on a